Councillor Bowden, you can start the meeting. Thank you. Yeah.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this meeting of Cabinet. Welcome also to those members of the public and press who continue to join us via the live stream to YouTube. During the live broadcast, members and officers are asked please to ensure that mobile phones are placed in silent mode and that microphones are switched off whilst not in use. Agenda item 1. Would member services please report any apologies for absence?
Thank you. We've had apologies from Councillor Warwork.
Thank you very much. Agenda item 2 are the previous minutes, which are to be found on pages 5 to 8 of your agenda pack. These are the public minutes which we're being asked to approve as a correct record of the meeting which took place on the 27th of January 2025. May I ask any member who doesn't agree with these minutes to indicate that now? Councillor Mrs. Laws.
Thank you, Chair. Can I just make one slight adjustment, please, on, let me see, CAB 45/24, and that's the Leisure Centre Condition Survey update. I did actually mention the tennis court is not being fully used during, owing to some disagreement with the management of the tennis club. And they do not seem to have welcomed the netball club. Can I retract that statement because that was hearsay? I'd like to actually now put in there that there's no such rift exists in the minds of the tennis club officials. And as a main point of contact, there's friendly consultations going on, and they have a dialogue continuing now in the future between the tennis club, FDC, and also the netball club.
I'm afraid, Councillor Laws, that the minutes are meant to be a record of what actually was said at the meeting rather than what we now might wish had been said. Right. However, I'm perfectly willing to bend the rules a little bit and subject to member services being able to assist on this for the comment you have just made, and I take you've got it in writing. Yes. If you could supply that to member services and then for that to be included under this agenda item as how you would now like the situation to be referred to.
Thank you, Chair. It was just I did say the word hearsay before, and that hasn't been recorded in the minutes.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Right. Anyone else who'd like to change what they said at the last meeting?
Probably lots.
No, everyone else is happy with the minutes. Fine, then we'll take them as correct record. So I will sign those, and I would ask as a note to this agenda item, but not as part of changing the minutes, that Councillor Law's comments be recorded as well. Fine. Well, I hope the other agenda items aren't going to be so difficult. Agenda item 3 for urgent items, there aren't any. Agenda item 4. The usual agenda item to do with interests, and it's to receive any declarations of interest under the local code of conduct or any interest under the code of conduct on planning matters in respect of any items to be discussed at this meeting. If you have anything to declare, would you please inform the meeting now? I see no one raising their hands. If anything occurs to anyone during the meeting that they have an interest that they should declare, please do declare that as quickly as possible. Thank you very much. Agenda item 5 is the business plan 2025-26 and is to be found on pages 9 to 28 of your agenda packs. May I ask Councillor Tierney, please, to propose this motion?
Yeah, happy to so propose, Chairman.
Thank you. A seconder? Councillor Mrs. French, thank you very much indeed. Would you care to speak on this, Councillor Tierney?
I have to be honest, Chairman, I think enough has been said on the business plan, so I'm happy to move forwards. I trust everyone's read the papers and understands them.
Thank you. Does anyone else have anything they wish to say? I will say one or two things on this because, of course, there is a significant difference here compared with what we've seen so far, and that is the inclusion of the Fenland Inspire projects. which are a fundamental change to our business plan for 25/6 and beyond, and are a result of the changes which are being put forward by government as far as local government reorganisation is concerned. And it is for us to try to ensure that Fenland is left at the end of its expected existence with the facilities which the residents of Fenland need. And in order to do that before local government reorganisation, we need significantly to change our business plan from what had previously been put forward and what had previously been put to overview and scrutiny panel as well. So there have been some significant changes, but they will come out both in the budget item at this meeting and more fully at full council, that this business plan and the budget are to be referred to. Anyone wish to say anything else at this stage? Then the proposal. Oh, Councillor Tierney.
Thank you, Chairman. So I was kind of saving my powder for the full council meeting, and because at this stage I wasn't sure how direct we were being, but given how direct you just were, I think it's great what we're doing. It's a brilliant plan for Fenland, and I look forward to seeing the council agree and it to move forwards. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Tierney. The recommendation, which is set out on page 10, is for Cabinet to consider and recommend the final business plan for 25/6 to full council this afternoon for approval. Those in favour, please show. That's agreed unanimously. Thank you very much. Right, agenda item 6 is the budget 25/26 and the medium-term financial strategy, which is to be found on pages 29 to 96 of the report. I will formally propose this. May I have a seconder? Councillor Tierney, thank you very much indeed. Just as a short introduction, I'll try not to speak for too long about it. Budgets are always difficult things to do. They're never easy. They haven't been easy for many years. In fact, I think it's a false memory that things used to be easier 10 or 20 years ago. I'm sure that, in fact, I know they were just as difficult 20 years ago because I had responsibility in another authority as the finance portfolio holder. So I know it's never been as easy as we think it used to be in the good old days. But honestly, it gets harder and harder every single year. And a great deal of credit needs to go to our finance team, to Sean, to Mark and Peter and all the people who work with them for the amount of work that they put in, which is almost all hidden behind the scenes and doesn't come before members, to members' attention. And this year in particular has been even more difficult than usual, not merely because of the normal problems that we have of ensuring that we have a budget which is sustainable in the medium term, but also because well into the process of setting up a budget for the year 25/6, we discovered unexpectedly in December, out of the blue, that government planned to abolish us on the 31st of March 2028. So that fundamentally changed a whole host of things to do with how we wish to move forward, some of which are reflected in the Fenland Inspire matter that we talked about in the last agenda item. And it does mean that we will now be looking at significant amounts of capital expenditure in particular over the course of the next 3 years to ensure that when Fenland ceases to exist and when we move to a unitary authority, that the facilities that we have in Fenland are appropriate, are in good order, and are able to serve the interests of the people of Fenland for decades to come. If we fail to do this, the likelihood is that a unitary authority with very different priorities, particularly priorities on financial pressures on adult social services, children's social services, and SEND, especially given those, the nice things that we do, unfortunately, will fall won't just fall to the back of the list, they'll fall right off the list in terms of works which are being done. So we've got to look after Fenland now, because we can't guarantee, in fact, we can't expect that the new unitary authority will have the same priorities that we've got at the moment. So as a result of that, we have now changed very significantly what our plans are, both for 25/6 and for the medium-term financial strategy. As a result, more than £30 million of capital expenditure has been included, which wasn't there in the draft that we had back in December, and wasn't there in the figures which were put before the overview and scrutiny panel earlier this year. And as I say, most of that is to do with Fenland Inspire, and I'll leave talking about it at much greater length until we get to the full council meeting, because I'm sure you don't want to hear it all twice. In addition, we'll be looking at various other things that we need to do, including, very importantly, because it makes a significant difference in the transfer values, changing our method of calculating minimum revenue provision to ensure that we have an appropriate figure which is passed over to the new unitary authority. So as far as our capital financing requirement is concerned. The budget does show that there is a revised estimate of a shortfall in the current financial year of £350,000. I'm very optimistic that that figure will significantly reduce. I am moderately optimistic that we will end up with a surplus in the year for a number of reasons, some of which are systemic, to do with matters such as cut-off, others to do with some of the changes which are being proposed, including, for that matter, the change in MRP. But as ever, we won't actually know the answer to that until after the end of the financial year. But I think I'm reasonably safe in saying that figure of 350,000 is going to reduce significantly between now and the time that the final figures are produced. As far as next year, there is a significantly larger figure which is shown as a potential deficit, and again, work is being done on that already to reduce that number. And I know that we will be working all the way through the year to continue to ensure that we have an appropriate balance between our income and our expenditure. We have, over the last 5 years, saved up best part of over £1.6 million in a budget equalisation reserve, specifically to allow for the possibility that at some time there will be a deficit on the income and expenditure account which needs to be met without going into our general reserve. And we may, I'm not saying we definitely will, but we may well need to dip into that in the year 25-26. But there's a long way to go before we finish off 25-26's figures. Again, I'm pleased to say, and I think it's entirely appropriate given the financial position of so many residents in Fenland, that we are not proposing any increase in the council tax for this year. At least our share of the council tax will remain as it has done, as it was the previous year. We are the best authority in the country so far as our council tax record is concerned over the last 8 years. And I hope that we'll be able to retain that all the way through until the end of the existence of Fenland District Council. And we do have some issues to be addressed, and now's not the time to go into detail, but we have some issues to address about the level of Band D council tax that we in Fenland have, that other local authorities within Cambridgeshire may have, and that Peterborough City Council may have when it's decided which are the authorities which are going to make up the new unitary authority, because the equalisation of those is going to be an issue which is going to be of significant importance in 3 or 4 years' time. Right, I'm not going to go into too much more detail than that. You will see that £30 million has been lopped in using round numbers into the budget so far as the additional capital expenditure is concerned. And again, I'm extremely grateful for changes which are being made to this budget by officers at a very, very late stage in the whole process, especially when there's such large numbers, and especially when they do include some costs which fall into 2025-26. The way in which we will be financing all of the capital expenditure from 24-25 all the way through to 27-28 hasn't yet been fixed. I know that there are numbers which are in the budget, but they are really indicative. And once we have passed the budget today, I will be speaking with officers for us to work out which is the most appropriate way to finance the various capital requirements that we've got, because it's now become quite a delicate act as to what we need to do, in which order we need to do it, and what's going to be most effective in the interests of Fenland as a whole. And it's nowhere near as straightforward as it has been in the past. I'll leave it at that. I'm happy to answer any questions, also happy for anyone else who wishes to say anything about the budget. Councillor Tierney.
Thank you, Chairman. First of all, I'm proud that, is it for the 8th year on the trot we're going to freeze council tax? I think it'll be the 8th year on the trot, 7th or 8th. It's been a long while anyway. And I think that's fantastic. I've spoken about it in previous years, how important I think it is for us to make the hard decisions so that people struggling to pay their bills don't have to make the hard decisions, or as hard anyway. Anything we can do to relieve the pressure I think is important. So that's really good news. One of the things that a potential local government reorganisation makes you do is perhaps have a look at some of your neighbours and see how they're doing. Now, I'm not going to name any councils because they've all got their own problems, but I will say that there are some local councils who we might end up paired with, because we don't know the shape of a future council, are in a far worse financial situation than we are. Some of them are drowning in debt, some of them have huge deficits and lots of problems coming down the line. We, for many years, have taken very sensible decisions, very mature decisions to manage money well. And it's the taxpayers' money we're managing well. And that's why we're able to freeze council tax and still deliver excellent services. And that's a mixture of strong political leadership and excellent work from officers who then make those things happen. And it's been a great team, which I think will be very sad if it comes to an end. So we'll have to wait and see what happens on that. But one of the things looking at these other councils, and you say, well, if we end up paired with those councils or grouped with some of those councils, will their debt and their problems kind of swamp the good financial decisions we've taken? We're quite a small council, and the answer is it almost certainly will. So it then makes sense to use your money a little differently, because the money we have here is money that Fenland's taxpayers gave us. We have no money without Fenland taxpayers, and it's their money that we're managing well. So it's quite important that we make sure that they get a fair deal out of any future reorganisation, that they don't end up paying everybody else's bills with nothing to show for it. So I think for that reason, the Fenland Inspire idea is a great idea, and I really want to see it move forwards. If it weren't for local government reorganisation, maybe we'd be doing these things a bit more slowly. But we have a limited amount of time to put in place a legacy which will serve Fenland well. And I think this budget is a strong start to that, and the other remarks that you've made. So I just want to stress, I think we should tell the government we don't think the reorganisation is wanted, and I think we should tell them we would prefer not to be included in it. I'm realistic that we may have no control over that. Let's see how it pans out. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Tierney. Councillor Mrs. French.
Thank you. Yeah, I fully support what Councillor Tierney has said. More importantly, I want to thank the officers and yourself, Leader. I know that you had been working on this budget and more or less got yourself organised for December until we got the bombshell hit on us in December, and you've had to reorganise a major, well, I would say the whole budget. So I would like it on record to say thank you to you personally, but thank you more so to your officers who have done an extremely wonderful job.
Thank you very much indeed. Does anyone else wish to have a say? Any questions? No. Okay, then we will move to a vote. There are detailed recommendations which are set out on page 30. And first of all, to ask for Cabinet to approve the revised estimates for 24-25 as set out in section 8 and Appendix A, which are currently showing an estimated shortfall of £350,000 to be funded from the Budget Equalisation Reserve if required. And for the further detailed recommendations numbers 2 to 9 to be recommended to full council for approval. Those in favour, please show. That's agreed unanimously. Thank you very much indeed. Agenda item 7 is the Leisure Facility Strategy, the initial assessment phase, to be found on pages 97 to 126 of your agenda pack. This contains various potential enhancements to the Council's 4 leisure centres as part of the Fenland Inspire project. Members will note the detailed financial information and impact within the report, and note if we move forward with this feasibility work, further reports will be tabled at Cabinet or at Council as required to move them forwards to completion. Councillor Miscanthon, would you please propose the report?
Thank you, Chairman. The report, which I hope you've all read, makes very interesting reading, bearing in mind it affects all 4 towns within the Fenland area. The vision that we've got for those centres is great, and I think moving forward, if you've read the report, yes, it's going to cost a lot of money, we know that, but what we're trying to do is future-proof all those centres so that when and if we are dissolved, that the people of Fenland have excellent facilities to keep on. With the current situation in other councils where they are closing them, we are not. We're hoping to improve them, and currently some of them are being improved, for want of a better term. March gets handed back to the public tomorrow because the pool is opening, and March councillors have been invited on 9 o'clock tomorrow morning. So that's a good point. It gets it in the public eye, and it's future-proofing the centres for the whole of Fenland. And without going through the whole report, which is quite lengthy, I think it would probably bore some people to sleep and make this meeting last hours longer. So I would recommend this to the Cabinet and to go forward to full council.
Thank you very much indeed. May I have a seconder, please? Councillor Mrs. French, thank you very much indeed. I'll open this matter for discussion. Councillor Tierney first.
I feel like I'm talking a lot today, Chairman. It's interesting. It's an interesting meeting. There's a lot going on, and I think that's quite good. So first of all, thank you, Councillor Miscandlin, for all the work that you've been doing with the Fenland Leisure Centres. They're so important for the people of Fenland because they're not only a place for people to get fit and for our kids to learn to swim, but they're also a community place where people get together and meet and mix and mingle. And I just think other places that are closing their leisure centres are making a tragic mistake that they will regret, and I'm glad that we're protecting ours. One of the things I've seen, I've been doing a survey in Wisbech asking people for their issues, and one of the things people are often saying in the survey is that could we look at the leisure centre in Wisbech because it's a bit dirty, or there are facilities that aren't working as well. And I'll be able to now go back to them and say, absolutely, that is what we plan to do. We can't affect what some future council might do, but what we can do is put everything in order so that if we have to hand it over to another body, they can't say it was handed over poorly. It's handed over well, and then we'll be able to say to them, make sure it stays good. So I'm fully in support of this. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Anyone else wish to say anything? If not, then I'll have just one. Oh, sorry, Councillor Miscandlin. Apologies.
I'd like to come back and thank Councillor Tierney for his remarks, but it's not me. It's me and the officers. It's not just me doing it. It's a team effort, and it's the inspired effort of the whole team of Fenland to get this moving forward.
Thank you. Anyone else? Then I will just have a few words about one particular sub-issue here. And there is so much here to talk about, it has to be said, but it is all within the papers. One thing which isn't fully within the papers, however, is the future of Whittlesea Rifle Club at the Manor Leisure Centre. And we've made a commitment in the past, and that commitment is shown in these papers, that we will ensure that there continue to be facilities for the Rifle Club to operate. However, suggestions have been made by the Rifle Club that we could, with relatively little additional expenditure, allegedly, that we could manage to have much greater ambition in turning this into a regional centre of excellence for shooting in all its forms. And it's certainly something which I have asked the Rifle Club to discuss with officers at this very early stage to see if it's possible for us to meet that ambition. It really would be an excellent thing for Fenland if we did have such a regional centre of excellence. And I very much welcome the ambition that the Rifle Club have. I just hope that our financial obligations are such that we might be able to at least partially meet what it is that they're asking for. Councillor Hoy.
I just wanted to note, I think we're probably one of the only councils in the country to be investing in a shooting club.
I could make some political comments there about certain councils being like a circle of councillors shooting at each other. And certainly some of them are not performing very well. But yes, we're possibly one of the few, but I'm sure we're not the only one. And it's a valid and valued sport. It provides a lot of benefit for individuals who use it. It is a sport which is open to people regardless of their physical ability, and those who are wheelchair bound, for example, are just as able to participate in the sport as those who aren't. It promotes all sorts of health and mental health benefits as well. And it is a sport which, I'm sorry to say, has been vilified by some who don't really realise what it is. Councillor Laws.
Yes, we're sharing.
Okay. Thank you, Chair. I was just going to add a few things. Obviously, I'm a Whittlesea councillor. The Rifle Club has grown, and also I think it's important to know that they give tuition to various age groups. And it's not only the importance of how you shoot a gun, it's the responsibility of having a gun and being trained. But I think the other thing that possibly is not mentioned, it supports many of our veterans that have been in the forces. And it has opened up, shall we say, a social circle for them. And of course, they're very disciplined and they can train. So I think it's important to mention them as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Laws. Councillor Tierney.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Again, it's just occurred to me that I mentioned about our kids learning to swim and how important leisure centres were, and I forgot to point out, of course, the fantastic news that there's a potential for a new swimming pool in Chatteris. Now, Chatteris has long desired a great new swimming pool. I think they used to have one that was privately owned. I don't know the whole situation, but that's fallen into disrepair. And I really love that for Chatteris. I think as a town, they're going to be quite excited about this plan. And I'm really looking forward to seeing their response to it because I think it's such good news. Thank you.
Well, I do have to say that we do have Councillor Hay to thank for pushing that forward as soon as she realised what the financial situation was and what's happening with the council and the changes with local government reorganisation. She grabbed hold of me as quickly as she could and said, this is our one chance and one and only chance to get something done for Chatteris. Councillor Benny.
Thank you, Chairman. In the Chatteris councillor, when I stood for election, the swimming pool came up many, many times. It's a very emotive topic locally. Chatteris has always felt it sort of missed out a little bit in its leisure facilities, and I truly welcome this. And for the few people that I've spoken to in Chatteris about this, very, very positive. And I think this will be a lasting legacy of Fenland to have the swimming pool down at the leisure centre. And I don't think there'll be anybody who would object to this. It's a strongly supported scheme, and I look very much forward to seeing this come forward.
Thank you very much. Any other comments from anyone? Oh, Councillor Miscandon, sorry.
Yeah, that's quite all right. Yes, and Councillor Hay grabbed me as well and said, if you're going to spend some money, we'd like a swimming pool, and that's great. But on the subject of the Rifle Club, tomorrow evening, Phil Hughes and myself are attending the Friends of the Manor meeting, where undoubtedly the Rifle Club will be brought up to us because there are members on that belong to the Rifle Club. So I think we're going fully prepared to be ambushed without the guns to look at their facilities, which we will do.
Thank you. Anyone else care to say anything? Councillor Benny.
Thank you, Chairman. I don't shoot at Whittlesea Gun Club, but I have been a member of gun clubs over the past, and I still shoot. It's nice to see a council pushing for this to have a rifle club. Nationally, there is a central government seem to be clamping down and wanting to take rifles and guns away from people, which is taking choice and freedom away from people. We live in a rural area, and this is part of a rural life. And I think it's very good, and I would strongly support anything to bring forward the rifle range and encourage this. It teaches safe use of firearms, which is very important. And we also have a gun shop in Whittlesea, yeah, and that would help support that gun shop. It's a tricky time for anyone in rural sports, and I feel that the government that we have at the moment is so down on rural sports and the country way of life that it's commendable that we're going forward with this.
Thank you, Councillor Benny. And I think it's worth mentioning that the Rifle Club are very well aware of the national political situation and some people's desire to see all guns disappear entirely. And they are, in putting forward their ideas, they are well aware that laser guns are also part of, laser rifles are also part of the competitive side of shooting. And what they are putting forward is going to be consistent with that, as well as using proper rifles. The only problem with it, of course, is that the laser guns don't have the same application outside, so not much use for pest control if someone wishes to use their skills legally in order to deal with pests. Good. Any other comments from anyone? Yeah, Councillor Tierney.
Only Chairman that this, I never thought I'd be sitting in a council meeting discussing laser guns. So thank you for that. That's a first for me.
Thank you very much. Right, well, I know you have enough comics which have got laser guns in them, so you may well be the expert on the subject. Good. Right, well, we have quite a number of detailed recommendations which are on pages 102 to 104 of the agenda pack. And I think I actually need to take these separately so that we make sure that we have the correct authority which has been given for the correct items. So first of all, that Cabinet, on the condition survey work, the Cabinet agrees that condition survey work across the leisure facilities remains necessary and should remain funded within the capital programme, 5-year costs being estimated to be £9.155 million, although we're likely to bring that forward, so it won't be a whole 5 years. And the Cabinet instructs the Section 151 officer to make continued provision for condition survey work by adding an additional £7 million into the capital programme in the next 3 years, adjusted as necessary to be included with other leisure capital project options, which are detailed in the next few items. Those in favour, please show. That's agreed, thank you. Then to talk about some of the detail. On the Manor Leisure Centre, for Cabinet to progress the Manor Leisure Centre significant refurbishment project, detailed in this report, to REBA Stage 3 at a cost of £276,775, with Cabinet authorising the Section 151 officer to add this additional sum and any other relevant expenditure into the Council's capital programme in 25-26, including the rifle range and sport hall options, for Cabinet to agree REBA Stage 4 to be completed concurrently with REBA Stage 3 at an additional cost of £349,688, and to authorise the Section 151 officer to add this additional cost and any other relevant expenditure into the Council's capital programme in 2025-26, including any additional REBA Stage 3 or Stage 4 costs related to the rifle range and sports hall options. And the Cabinet notes that upon completion of REBA Stage 4, a report will be developed offering options for Cabinet to recommend to full Council to either proceed with construction works or halt the project. Current construction costs are estimated at £13.49 million for the facility, including the rifle range and sports hall options, and could proceed in 26-7. If the Council decides not to proceed with construction, then the REBA Stage 3 and Stage 4 costs will revert to revenue. Is that agreed by members? Those in favour, please show. It's agreed unanimously, thank you. For the Chatteris Leisure Centre, the Cabinet approves refurbishment work of the facility and authorises the Section 151 officer to add an additional £50,000 into the Council's capital programme for these works in 25-26. The Cabinet considers carefully the Chatteris swimming pool project, and if the capital costs are acceptable, authorises the Section 151 officer to add an additional £164,486 into the capital programme to develop the Chatteris swimming pool project to REBA stages 0 to 2. Cabinet to note that this is a capital cost, but should the project not proceed past this point, then the expenditure would revert back to a revenue cost. Those agreed, please show. All agreed, thank you. On the George Campbell Leisure Centre, that Cabinet approved to fund short-term projects for the George Campbell Leisure Centre, and if agreed, authorise the Section 151 officer to add an additional £390,000 into the Council's capital programme for these works. And the Cabinet notes, in addition to the short-term projects just mentioned, condition survey works will continue at the site at a cost in the region of £2.5 million. Those in favour, please show. That's agreed unanimously, thank you. And on the Hudson Leisure Centre, for Cabinet to authorise the Section 151 officer to add an additional £450,000 into the capital programme for 2025-26 for the development of 3 external covered floodlit paddle courts at the Hudson Leisure Centre, for Cabinet to consider whether to instruct officers to develop estimated costs for each of the non-condition survey short-term Hudson projects which have been identified, namely adapting the multifunctional space that is currently used for spinning into an assisted fitness and older persons health and well-being space, and given that the current gym has current unused space at the end of the gym, that the potential be explored for conversion into activity rooms for box fit, circuit training and spin. that Cabinet instructs officers and the portfolio holder for leisure to bring to Cabinet further refurbishment options for the Hudson Leisure Centre, considering, first of all, the addition of a kitchen space to generate additional revenue from soft play and soft play parties. Secondly, the remodelling of access to the sports hall and possible soft play improvements to generate increased community use and revenue. Thirdly, the consideration of further uses for the sports hall that would generate additional revenue linked with the new cafe and kitchen. And fourthly, external entrance and reception improvements. Those in favour, please show. That's agreed unanimously, thank you. And Cabinet is then asked also to note that agreement to pursue any of the projects we've just mentioned is subject to full council approval of the budget today. Those happy to note that, please show. And that's noted unanimously. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you, Councillor Miscanton, for getting through that particular agenda item. Right, we now move to agenda item 8, which is the Fenland Waste Strategy, which is to be found on pages 127 to 162 of your agenda pack, and is for approval by full council in order to meet updated legislative requirements. Councillor Tierney, would you please propose this report?
Thank you, Chairman. The government has mandated that we collect food waste separately, and so we have to consider changing our recycling collections. Now, before everybody sighs and says, why are they tampering with all this again? This is actually, I think, quite good news for us. We've managed to work this so that it's going to be an improvement for residents. Now, the legislation says it must start in a year's time. And as a result, we have to make some changes to our waste strategy and waste service standards as outlined in the report. The change will see customers able to opt into a weekly collection of their smelly waste. So each property will receive a small outdoor container and a kitchen caddy, along with a supply of sacks to keep things tidy and reduce the smells. And this change will be supported with an appropriate communications so that everybody knows what's going on and understands their new responsibilities if they choose to take them on. Any food waste that our customers put in the food collections will be diverted from that landfill and from energy from waste plants and be composted and produce gas and electricity locally with a soil improver for local farmers. Now, I just want to stress, definitely not going to the Wisbech incinerator. So before anyone asks me that, definitely not. I've underlined that. They're getting none of it. Obviously, the county council, in the end, they're the ones who control this, but we will very strongly say to them, and there's no economic reason for them to do it anyway. There were some other changes, simpler recycling. So some of the changes would require us to consider what we do with dry recycling, but luckily the government's proposals have allowed us to be quite flexible, and broadly nothing's going to change, because what we do at the moment is all the recycling goes in the same bin and then we sort that out on behalf of the customers. You don't want this situation some councils have where there are 450 different bins. You've got to put every aspect of the periodic table into a different bin. None of that's happening. Instead, we're going to keep our good bin that everybody likes, that gets collected regularly, and we're going to sort the waste and get the money from using that, selling that waste. So it is, I think, all good news, because one of the things that residents often say is that in the summer the bins get really smelly and it takes too long to collect the food. Well, now those who opt in will be able to put their food in a little sack in their kitchen, pop that little sack outside. It'll be collected weekly, and the government is paying for most of this. So it's not even going to be a huge cost to us, we hope. So that's the proposals. Happy to take any questions, and please do support this. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Tierney. May I have a seconder, please? Councillor Murphy, thank you. Right, I'll open the matter for discussion. Anyone care to ask any questions or say anything? Councillor Miscanton.
Thank you, Chairman. The public will be notified as to what's going to happen with the bins and how it's going to be controlled. How are we going to do that? Are we going to do a letter drop or internet or whatever? What's going to happen with it in respect to that?
Councillor Tierney.
Well, exactly what we do is going to be, we'll talk to the comms team. There'll be national comms about this as well, because this is happening all over the country. So you're going to see adverts in the cinemas and on radio and whatever the government decides to do. So they'll already be promoting this a lot, but we have to make sure that our customers understand exactly what they've got to do too, and we'll use the usual channels, I'm sure. Some of it's still to be discussed, but as you've seen in the past, when changes are made, you can put a note on the bin, you can put things on our website, you can put out press releases, you can go onto social media. Councillors will be encouraged to promote to their residents what the changes are. So I think we're going to be pretty strong on how we tell everyone, make sure that everyone is in full understanding, because that's on us to make sure they know what to do, isn't it? Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Ms. Hoy.
Yeah, is there a danger if people have got more bins and a weekly collection that they might put their food waste in the new bin, and then so their normal bin will become full of garden waste, and then they'll cancel their garden waste subscription?
I think it's fair to say there are always some potential knock-on effects that you can't consider, and I'm not going to deny that. But at least one of the way I see it is people will have a bit more space in their traditional bins because the food waste won't be in it anymore. They'll have, so anyone who says, well, my bins fill up too quickly, they can have a bit more space in their bins because that food waste is now in another third smaller bin, quite a discreet little cylinder-sized bin, and that'll get collected weekly. So you've got an option to get rid of your waste quite efficiently, more often than we do now. It's an improvement to service. But will there be some knock-on effects? I suppose there will be some. And if there is, we'll just address them as they arise.
Thank you, Councillor Tierney. Councillor Seaton.
Thank you, Chair. I may be wrong here, but wasn't there some government talk or rumour about changing the frequency of bin collections, and how is that likely to affect what we're trying to do within Fenland?
Thank you, Councillor Tierney.
Well, we can only work with what the government is currently telling us. So they could throw any curveball at us. I don't know what they're going to do next. I've got to say, it's unusual for me to be saying the government's doing a good thing, but the previous government and the current government who haven't changed this, I think it's broadly a pretty good plan because it helps us with the problems we've got, solves a lot of issues, but it's not so heavy-handed that it makes us do it in a way that bothers our residents. So I think this is all good news, mostly.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? No? Good. Well, the detailed recommendations are on page 128 of your agenda pack and request Cabinet to recommend the updated Waste Service Standards, TEEP, and Waste Strategy at Appendices 1, 2 and 4 for approval by full Council, and to note that a revised area-wide strategy will be brought forward for consideration later this year. Those in favour, please show. That's agreed unanimously. Thank you very much indeed. Agenda item 9 is Homelessness and Rough Sleeping Strategy and Action Plan, which is to be found on pages 163 to 262 of your agenda pack. And it's up to ask Cabinet to consider the approval of a Homelessness and Rough Sleeping Strategy and Action Plan for 2024 to 2029. Councillor Ms Hoy, would you please propose this report?
Thank you. So this report updates Cabinet regarding our statutory responsibility to produce a strategy and action plan in relation to homelessness and rough sleeping. It's a requirement from the Ministry of Housing, Communities and Local Government that we publish this action plan, so that's what we're doing. The Council has responded positively to the needs of the community and successfully bid for central government funding to provide services and initiatives to help tackle homelessness and rough sleeping. The strategy sets out in Appendix A and an action plan at Appendix B, and it's been co-produced under the leadership of myself with a large number of partners in the public and private, community and voluntary sector who recognise that homelessness is everyone's business and it's an unacceptable outcome. The Council has undertaken 2 consultation exercises, including the community and those with lived experience to help shape the documents, and we received 24 responses to the consultation. Our response is set out in Appendix C, and in the changes to response to the consultation are highlighted in yellow in the action plan. And there's a couple of points I wanted to just add myself. So I did make a few changes to the suggested strategy, mostly about the point regarding we don't know what's going to happen with the government's. They're saying that they're going to be producing a new paper regarding private rented sector, and I think they're calling it like a renter's charter, and I think they're billing it as good news, but I personally have some real reservations about how good news this will be, because the harder we make it for private landlords to make any money, they will just leave the market and we'll have even less houses available for people to rent. That's then going to push prices up. Prices of rental prices compared to sale prices in Finland are much higher, than they were in other areas, and that is because we do have a lack of supply. So I do really have some quite grave concerns that in the next sort of 3 or 4 years this problem is going to get worse, and that is going to impact us in terms of our temporary accommodation as well. But some more positive news, I suppose, is that our rough sleeping numbers are down. We are doing an awful lot, and officers, I just want to say thank you to the whole team, because it is a number of people doing this on a daily basis. It's kind of the bread and butter, and people don't see this. But there was a case recently on Facebook that I did share with the team of obviously won't go into too many details, but of a lady that was a particular challenging case, I think it's fair to say, locally, and she is now absolutely flourishing and doing so well, and that is thanks to the work that the team have done, and that is actually real life-changing stuff, so thank you to them, and mostly, particularly thanks to Dan Horn, because if Dan Horn wasn't here, I don't think we'd be running, personally. So thank you very much, Dan.
Thank you very much indeed, Councillor Ms Hoy. May I have a seconder, please? Councillor Mrs French, thank you very much indeed. Right, the item is now open for discussion or questions. Anyone wish to ask anything or to say anything? No? Right, well, since there aren't any speakers, the recommendation is set out on page 163 of the agenda pack, and it's for Cabinet to approve the Homelessness and Rough Sleeping Strategy and Action Plan for 2024-2029. Those in favour, please show. That's agreed unanimously. Thank you all very much indeed. We now move on to agenda item 10, which is the 24 High Street Wisbech update, which is on pages 263 to 268 of the agenda pack. Councillor Seaton, please may I invite you to propose this report.
Thank you, Chair. Work continues at a pace inside 24 High Street, with interior works well underway. Some exterior works are still underway too, including the shop frontage and the actual roof itself, although the building is already watertight. The handover date of the building remains April the 25th on 2025, with just 72 days to go. This will be 61 days after the February Cabinet date. As highlighted in the report and the reports of previous months, the Council has been in discussions with a contractor regarding additional time and payments being claimed. This situation has now been resolved. As members can see from the report, the current expected construction cost is £3.264 million, with the report asking Cabinet to approve the additional £264,000 required. There are two recommendations, Chairman. Firstly, the Cabinet delegates authority to the S151 officer, working in conjunction with the portfolio holder of finance, to fund the additional £265,000 identified as necessary at this time to complete the construction obligation as part of the building work. And number two, that Cabinet notes that until the building is completed, there may be the additional costs, albeit these are anticipated to be more minor in nature, as the complex part of the building sales works has been completed. It is anticipated that further costs will be addressed by way of a portfolio or officer decision. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Seaton. And just to avoid any confusion, the amount involved is 265,000. You said 264,000. So it is 265,000. Just to make sure that everyone's on the same page. Right, may I have a seconder, please? Councillor Ms Hoy, thank you very much indeed. Any comments or questions? It is absolutely excellent news that we're reaching the finishing straight on this. I'll be delighted when we no longer have 24 High Street on our agendas. And I think that the people of Wisbech will be delighted when that long-running saw is finally sorted out and we have a property which is in full use and which fits in with the rest of the Market Square. So I'd like to thank Councillor Seaton for the very long process it's been to get from where we had been to here, and look forward to this being completed very quickly. Any other comments from anyone? Councillor Mrs French.
Yeah, thank you, Leader. Yeah, I totally agree with that. If my memory serves me right, we started discussing this in something like 2011-12. It's been a long, long road, and I have to say I look forward to not seeing any more of 24 High Street on Cabinet or Council papers.
Thank you very much. Councillor Seaton.
2011 and 2012, the other side of the street, actually, Councillor French.
Sorry.
But no, I would just like to say thank you for those comments, Chairman, but, you know, the officers have done an extreme amount of work on this over a long period of time, and it's not been without its difficulties, I think, as everyone understands the complexity of the building and also the difficulty dealing with our contractors as well, which has not been an easy time. Thank you.
Absolutely, and I have to thank Cabinet for the support they've given on this, because we've had to grasp the nettle more than once to make difficult decisions to move the whole project forwards. Otherwise, that particular location could have remained undeveloped for decades to come. So thank you all for the support that you've given. So the report is in front of us. The recommendation is set out on page 264 of the agenda pack, and it's for Cabinet to delegate authority to the Section 151 officer and to fund the additional £265,000 identified as necessary to complete the construction of 24 High Street and to note the potential for additional costs. Those in favour, please show. That's agreed unanimously. Thank you very much indeed. Agenda item 11 is the draft 6-month Cabinet Forward Plan, which is to be found on pages 269 to 270 of the agenda pack. You have that in front of you. Are there any questions or comments? Councillor Mrs French.
Thank you, Leader. I don't particularly have any questions on this one, but I would like to just bring it to your attention, as you are well aware. We attended a meeting of the County Council on the 11th of this month. I did put a motion in with regarding to civil parking enforcement officers at County Council, members at Highway and Transport Chairman did agree that he would discuss with yourselves and Fenland and county officers. So I hope to see something in the near future to see how we can move civil parking enforcement along. We have been talking about it since 2019. I know there's reasons that COVID, etc., but it's time it moved on, and there is a way forward.
Thank you, Councillor French. And of course, at your instigation, CPE has now been added to the Fenland Inspire list as a project that we want to see completed as quickly as possible. And yes, we may have reached the stage now where members are all singing from the same hymn sheet, and now we only have to put the detail together. So thank you very much indeed for commenting on that. And obviously that will come before a meeting of Cabinet as soon as it's appropriate to do so. Any other comments on this particular item? No. Then the forward plan's noted for information. Agenda item 12, there are no urgent items. Agenda item 13 is the transfer station tender. Now this has a confidential appendix, and this is to be found on pages 271 to 278 of your agenda packs. This requests the Cabinet approves the procurement of a replacement provider for the bulking and transfer of Fenland's domestic and commercial mixed dry recycling. Now, members will note that it's been proposed that Appendix 1, which appears at page 277 of the confidential agenda pack, is exempt from publication in accordance with paragraph 3 of Schedule 12A of the Local Government Act 1972. This is because it contains commercially sensitive financial information in relation to the proposed tender exercise, which, if disclosed prior to the commencement of the process, could undermine the Council's ability to achieve best value. For this reason, it's considered in the public interest that the information in Appendix 1 is maintained as exempt at this time. Is this agreed by members? Please show. Yep, that's agreed by everyone. Thank you very much indeed. Now, I'm very much hoping that we won't need to go out of public session, but if anyone does wish to discuss any of the content of Appendix 1, please do let me know in advance so that we can leave public session. But I'm not sure that it's really necessary for us to do so, but it's up to members that. So, Councillor Murphy, please may I invite you to propose this report.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. First of all, I'd like to thank Mark Matthews and his team for this report and getting it to this stage. It has taken a long, long time, and I think it will still take a little while after this. The Fenland is fortunate to currently have in place arrangements with Mick George for the bulking and transfer of the 9,500 tonnes of blue bin materials that are collected each year. The Mick George site in Algoria's Way, Wisbech, is part of the construction site of the Medworth Energy from Waste site, and as such we do not expect the current arrangements to continue beyond the summer of this year. With notice expected soon, there is a need to urgently return to the market and seek an alternative provider or providers. From the Environment Agency's information, there are only a small number of suitably licensed transfer stations sites in or around Fenland. One of these sites is in Melbourne Avenue, March, is owned by the County Council and operated by Thalia through the County Council's PFI agreement. The County Council already having suitable asset with March makes exploration of possible joint working or contractual agreements a potential solution that should be explored and ruled out in parallel to the tender process. Members should note that given the lack of suitable facilities at the previous tender process, there is a risk that Fenland will be left without suitable facilities and or contractor. As such, the only remaining option would be to purchase or construct temporary or permanent facilities to allow for the continued transfer of these materials. Should the only available site be outside of Fenland's boundary, then members should note that there is a risk of increased costs and as a result of increased journey times to the tipping point. Fenland currently has a legal duty under the Environmental Protection Act 1990, as amended by the Environment Act in 2021, to collect 5 recyclable materials: paper, card, glass, plastics and metals from all properties. Fenland elects to collect all these materials combined together in commingled collection. Given that the County Council have in place a suitable licence facility via their PFI agreement with Thalia, it seems only sensible to explore whatever options might be practical for both parties, whilst also extending the offer to the market should an inter-authority solution be feasible. The recommendations are all set out on pages 271 and 272.
Thank you, Councillor Murphy. May I have a seconder? Councillor Miss Hoy, thank you very much indeed. Now open the matter up for discussion. Councillor Miss Hoy.
Yes, thank you. I saw a few comments online over the weekend by residents, and I'm pretty sure they've misunderstood this, but I'll just clarify with you that I think they've read something about this moving potentially to March, and they think that we're talking about the household recycling centre in Wisbech, but we aren't, are we? This is a completely separate thing. That's my understanding. This is completely separate, and the sort of tip in Wisbech will remain.
Thank you, Councillor Miss Hoy. All comments through the chair, please. Councillor Murphy.
Yes, it's certainly, but at the moment it's all in the air, and this is what the idea of this paper's for, to get it sorted out, and that's part of what the commercial side of it is that we can't talk about today.
But the particular point that Councillor Miss Hoy made about the household refuse disposal site?
Well, that's what we're looking for, disposal sites.
Saying that there would no longer be a site for residents in Wisbech to use in Wisbech.
Yes, there probably will be, and in March and other places. But then they've got to go to another site. They're picked up and go to another site after that.
I think Councillor Hoy was talking about the household recycling centres which are operated by the County Council. And it's those that I think that was the question which was being asked. Councillor Hoy, do you want to explain?
Yeah, exactly? So what some residents are claiming is that the household recycling centre in Wisbech is moving to March. Now, what my understanding is they've read this paper and misunderstood, because this is a completely separate issue. And I just wanted to clarify that my understanding was correct, that this is a completely separate issue.
Yes, yeah.
Excellent. I just wanted to make sure that was made abundantly clear so that no one had any misinterpretation about that. Councillor Tierney.
Thank you. Again, I know the answer to this, but I've got to clarify it because people are watching who may not understand some of the technical details. When you mention the horrific incinerator in a paper and then you talk about waste recycling, people think, are you going to end up using the incinerator? And obviously we know we are not going to, because we've made a council resolution to never use them. But I just want to clarify that I would like to give Councillor Murphy the opportunity to say, no, there's just no chance that's happening. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Tierney. Councillor Murphy.
Well, there are other incinerators around the area of Cambridgeshire, and that's where they'll go to.
Thank you very much indeed. Councillor Mrs. French.
Thank you. Yeah, I think there seems to be a bit of confusion. The recycling centres are run by County Council. March should have had a new one built this year. Unfortunately, it's running late. The lease on the old site down 100 Road actually runs out, and they're supposed to turn it back into original form, what it was many years ago, by the end of 2027. But that is totally different to what we're talking about. This is recycling your refuse, your rubbish. This is not the recycle centres that are still remain open, and so will Wisbech unless County Council decide otherwise.
Absolutely, Councillor French, and I think it's really helpful to emphasise that point. Councillor Miss Hoy.
Yes, thank you. So I was just a little bit concerned with Councillor Murphy saying it could go to other incinerators. I do not support any incineration of our recycling. It goes completely against the waste hierarchy. We're supposed to recycle recyclable materials. And so I, on that basis, have to withdraw my second for this paper. Sorry to be awkward, but that's, I also would like to propose an amendment that we specifically say that we will not be sending our recyclable waste to incineration anywhere.
We will have the opportunity when officers come back to us with a report to look at the detail of it, and that is the correct point at which we should be considering this. I think officers have heard the comment that you have made, and I'm sure that that will then be reflected in the options which are available to us and the costs associated with those options. I'm sure that will come back to us when the report comes to us. But we actually need to look at all the available options which exist. The one which is utterly, completely ruled out, because we've already had a council resolution on this, is the utilisation of MVV for anything to do with this. Not that that would really be appropriate anyway, to be quite honest. But the right place for us to look at that is when we have the more detailed options which are made available to us. Councillor Tierney.
Yeah, you know, I do think it is hypocritical for us to say that we're not going to give anything to a Wisbech incinerator, but we might give it to some other incinerator that's plaguing some other area. Our issue with incinerators, I think, is wider than just the one in Wisbech, even though that is close to our hearts, of course, because we hate it. So, so with that in mind, I want officers to take a very strong steer that if this comes back to us with recommendations for incineration, I certainly won't support it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Tierney. I think Councillor Miss Hoy was strong enough in her comments without you needing to expand on that. I think officers have heard that very clearly, and there will be discussions which will take place before the paper comes back to us. But it's officers' job to present us with all the options which are available to us, and then it's our job to make the decisions based on what they tell us. Councillor Miss Hoy.
Yeah, my just massive concern with this now is it's going to set unnecessary hairs running, and I really do want it underlined in the paper today that we're not going to be going to either incinerators at all, but as a minimum MVV. As a minimum would want that, but I'm happy to, my preference would be no incineration at all, but as a compromise I would take MVV, but I do think that needs to be explicitly stated today in the paper.
Well, I think it's probably a little bit late for making an amendment on the hoof like that. The danger is if we do that, we'll actually be hindering officers too much. We'll end up not having to bring this back further at this early stage. So I think it's really important that we do have the consideration which is given here, and to add in, we do say for the portfolio holder also to be part of the process, the consultation process to move this forwards. I think what's been heard here has been noted by everyone, and I'd like to make a commitment that we don't proceed with incineration as an option unless that comes back before this cabinet. I'd like to make that. I'm looking at Councillor Murphy in particular, if we'd be able to do that. Your comments, Councillor Murphy?
Yeah, well, everything is being looked at, and the officers then are told, you know, what to do for best. And it's also not just best for us; it's for the best for everybody that lives in residence in Finland. That's what is more important than us.
Sure. So, if that's acceptable, that we will not proceed with an incineration option, because Councillor Murphy, as the portfolio holder, is part of the process in this. We won't proceed with an incineration option unless this is brought back to Cabinet for further discussion.
No, that's not acceptable to me. I do not support the incinerator option at all, and I have removed my seconder, so we need to find another seconder.
Councillor French seconds it. Any other comments from anyone? I'll put this to a vote then. Those in favour, please show. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Those against? 2. Passed by 7 votes to 2. Thank you very much. Right, we can move on to agenda item 14, which is the Article 4 direction which is being proposed for HMOs, houses of multiple occupation in Wisbech. Again, there is a confidential appendix in this agenda item. Now, Schedule 5, which appears on pages 313 to 321 of the confidential agenda pack, is exempt from publication, which is being proposed in accordance with paragraph 5 of Schedule 12A of the Local Government Act 1972. And this is because it contains information in respect of which a claim to legal professional privilege could be maintained in legal proceedings. Furthermore, the public interest test has been applied to the information contained in Schedule 5, and it's considered that the need to retain the information as exempt outweighs the public interest in disclosing it. Is that agreed by members? Please show. Yep, that's agreed unanimously, thank you. Again, we'll remain in public session for as much of the debate as we can. Ideally, we'll remain in public session for the whole debate, but if any member does wish to discuss any part of the content of Schedule 5, then following presentation of the report, please confirm your intention, and we will, as late as possible, go into exempt session. Councillor Hoy, may I please invite you to propose this report?
I think Councillor Laws was going to do it, but I'm happy to. It just really, the paper is what it is to introduce an Article 4 in Wisbech in the 2 wards. Does Councillor Laws want to say any more?
Thank you, Councillor Hoy. My apologies, Councillor Laws. Would you care to second this and to give us more information about it, please? Councillor Laws, please put your microphone.
Got a thick head today and a nice cold. HMOs play an important role in the local housing market in Finland, offering a flexible form of accommodation. This is often cheaper than a self-contained housing within the same area. However, it is important when HMOs do come forward to the council, can strike the right balance between facilitating new homes, but also ensuring that they are in the right places and designed appropriately. And what is at the heart of this proposal, Wisbech has reached saturation point for HMOs, and particularly the wards of Wisbech Riverside and Wisbech South. So moving forward, if members agree to an immediate and non-immediate Article 4 direction for the town of Wisbech, the existing HMOs are not affected by the proposal at all and can continue to help meet the needs for our residents, but any new proposals for small HMOs will require to be undertaken a planning application process for consideration. This is something small HMOs do not need to do at the moment. By implementing an immediate Article 4 direction for Wisbech South and Riverside, whilst at the same time implementing a non-immediate Article 4 direction for the rest of Wisbech, we can manage the risk of displacement into the wider area of Wisbech in a proportionate way. At the Schedule 4, you will see the range of issues that have been considered to support the proposal. A consultation with the community will commence alongside implementing the immediate and non-immediate Article 4 direction. That consultation will conclude before the pre-election period. This will allow opportunity for both our community and the landlords and agents to comment on the proposal. The report sets out legal and financial considerations as part of the proposal, but my assessment is that any risks relating to this can be managed, and the advantages for implementation will be of benefit for the town as a whole, particularly in maintaining and encouraging family housing and minimising impacts from large numbers of HMOs in a small geographical area. The recommendations are set out in section 3 of the report, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Councillor Mrs. Laws. Right, any comments from anyone? Councillor Mrs. French.
Thank you. Thank you. I welcome this. Unfortunately, I made a mistake in press print, but it's good for something else. We at Planning Committee, we have struggled because we've got no policy, and I hope that this does strengthen the policy and welcome and give clarity to planners and also planning committee members.
Thank you. That's extremely helpful. Whilst this doesn't exactly change policy, it does change process, and that almost has the same effect. We may, at some stage, wish to look at whether it's potentially possible to have supplementary planning guidance. There's a difficulty with that in that supplementary planning guidance is very limited in the scope that it can have in principle, but given the real problem that HMOs do cause us, it certainly is something that we'll want to explore. Right, any other comments from anyone? No? Right. Well, the recommendations are set out on page 280 of the agenda pack, and they ask Cabinet to recommend to full council the approval of a direction under Article 4.1 of the Town and Country Planning General Permitted Development England Order 2015, having non-immediate effect for Wisbech Town, apart from the excluded areas, withdrawing the permitted development right to change use from a dwelling house class C3 to a small HMO class C4 use as set out in Schedule 1, a direction under the same legislation but having immediate effect for the area of Wisbech Riverside and Wisbech South wards, withdrawing the permitted development right to change use from a dwelling house class C3 to a small HMO class C4 use as set out on Schedule 2, and delegated authority to the monitoring officer and portfolio holders for implementation of the consultation process and final approval of the directions, and the production of additional guidance to ensure that the planning policy approach for assessing planning applications in relation to Class C3 and C4 is clearly set out. Those in favour, please show. And that's agreed unanimously, thank you. Agenda item 15 relates to considerations of initial options for the future redevelopment of 11 to 12 High Street, Wisbech. This has a confidential appendix, more than one confidential appendix, confidential appendices on pages 323 to 372 in total in the confidential agenda pack. Now, this asks that Cabinet consider and review the options available for the future of 11 and 12 High Street, Wisbech, and asks us to provide officers with instructions on the preferred course of action. Now, within the report, it is suggested that the substantive report and Schedules 3 and 5, which appears at pages 325 to 331, 339 to 344, and 347 to 352 of the confidential appendix agenda pack, are exempt from publication in accordance with paragraph 3 of Schedule 12A of the Local Government Act 1972, because they contain commercially sensitive financial information in relation to the proposed works and associated tenders, which, if disclosed prior to the commencement of the process, could undermine the Council's ability to achieve best value. And for this reason, it's considered in the public interest that the information is maintained as exempt at this time. Is everyone in favour of keeping this information exempt at this time, please, Chair? That's agreed unanimously, thank you. Again, we'll remain in public session for as much of the debate as is possible, ideally for the whole debate. However, if any member wishes to discuss the detailed financial information set out in the report and Schedules 3 to 5, then following presentation of the public information, please confirm your intention and we'll enter exempt session. So, Councillor Seaton, may I invite you to propose this report, please?
This is one of the priority Fenland-inspired projects that we're being asked to take forward and deliver prior to the proposed local government reorganisation and the potential of FDC no longer existing post 31st of March 2028. We have looked at two options. Option 1, a mixed-use development of 14 one-bedroom flats, stroke studios and a retail unit. And option 2, a similar development, however scaled back, to provide 6 by 1 bedroom flats and a retail unit. Both options will deliver a mixed scheme use, with a design frontage that will add to the current established street scene in the town centre. However, with a financial profile, option 2 appears to deliver the only solution that also fits with the approved FDC investment strategy requirements and will therefore be recommended as part of the report. We have examined a number of funding courses, including NHLF, the CPCA, Towns Fund and FDC, and these are detailed within the paper. Cabinet are asked to agree that officers progress with option 2 as detailed herein, up to and including the grant of planning consent and tender return, and the expenditure as detailed in this report, deliver this work is approved. That upon completion of the tender return, the matter be brought back to Cabinet for approval prior to any commitment to the project commencing. And this would also need to go before Council as well. That is the report, Chairman. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you. May I have a seconder, please? Councillor Tierney, thank you very much indeed. Would anyone care to say anything about this? Councillor Tierney.
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, I'm in support of this. One of the problems I think we have with lots of private buildings in old towns is that if the owners let them fall into disrepair, or something happens to cause them to fall into disrepair, it becomes very difficult to ever fix that, and the problem begins to spread and more buildings become a problem, and you get a feeling that a town is crumbling away before you. And I know some people, certainly in Wisbech, and I'm sure the other towns have this in common, feel that there are areas of the town where that is happening. And perhaps they always expect that the local council will step in and fix it, but it's not that easy. You know, private property, the powers we've got are very limited. There are huge amounts of money, which no one ever wants to pay more council tax, and we aspire not to charge them more. But if you want people to do things, then sometimes that's the only way. So I quite like the fact that, because I don't think a future council, a future massive unitary is going to do anything about these buildings. So this is sort of our last opportunity to fix two buildings that have been on our radar for a long time, and really do need addressing before they just get so bad that it just is an utter blot. It's not been great for a while. And if we can fix this before any changes happen, so much the better. So I'm in favour of that, and you will be aware there are one or two other buildings we may also be talking about. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Missoy.
I don't know if this is in the confidential appendix, but also I'll say it in a way that probably will be unconfidential. When we're talking about the financing of it, and it was something Councillor Seaton mentioned in his speech about town board funding, and I thought when we'd spoken previously that wasn't going to be used, and so I was surprised to hear it in the speech. Councillor
Seaton.
I think the officers have just looked at all the opportunities that may be. It doesn't mean to say that we're going to go all down each route, but I think they've just put the menu there in front of us.
And as with all the Fenland Inspire projects, we'll be looking at the financing side of things quite separately from the authorisation of them, for reasons which I explained earlier when we were talking about the budget. So it's not an obligation that it will be covered by the Wisbech Town Fund, but it is a possibility, and that's what all that was mentioned by Councillor Seaton at this time. Councillors?
Yeah, I'm just disappointed about that, to be honest, because that wasn't the understanding that I had when I spoke about it, but I'll raise it outside this meeting. But the issue with doing you trying to sort of almost take the town board money, and it's mentioned actually in the Leisure Centre's paper, and I sort of let it go, but it just seems a little bit like the other towns are having capital money spent on them from Fenland, and then it's like, oh, we've got this government money from Wisbech, and we'll just use it to pay for Fenland District Council's current obligations, and that's not right. That's completely the wrong thing to do. So I just wanted to put that marker down, really, that I'd be very disappointed to see that in a report again.
Councillor Seaton.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Just on that, I mean, we're still on the table as the £1 million from the lottery fund, which we thought had disappeared because it's been an ongoing proposal list for 11 and 12, but that is still there, is our understanding. And you know, I think we have to look at various options for funding this. I suspect the town's fund won't be included in it, but that is not for me. That's for a separate, I think, discussion on this. And one thing I should have said earlier on the difference on the two options is that by reducing the number of bed sits does not reduce the footprint of the bed sits. It only reduces the footprint of the actual building. And you will have an area at the back which will be utilised by the inhabitants. Thank you, Chair.
And of course, by reducing the footprint of the whole building, we are significantly reducing the total amount of cost, which is a very relevant consideration.
We are, but I wasn't talking about costs in that.
Oh, I'm not naming any numbers. Right. Any other comments from anyone? Good. Right, so the recommendations are set out on page 323 of the agenda pack and are for Cabinet to note the contents of the report, to agree that officers progress with option 2 with the associated expenditure of £75,000 at this time, and to bring the tender returns back to Cabinet for future approval. Those in favour, please show. That's agreed unanimously. Thank you very much indeed. And this marks the end of the meeting. I declare the meeting closed, with the next meeting of Cabinet scheduled to take place on the 14th of March 2025, which is that our special meeting, or special, yes, which is a special meeting of Cabinet to discuss at this time just one item. Correct. Thank you all very much indeed, members.